I am thrilled to be here with you, especially in this series, jumping into the book of Esther. We have been reading through the story of Esther for the past 3 weeks, and it is an incredible story. It is found in the Old Testament of the Bible. It's a short book. It's historical. It's true. It's only 10 chapters long, and it's incredible. And even though it bears the name of Esther as the title of the book, it's really not Esther's story at all. It's really God's story. And it's a story about God's providence. And providence is this big word that we've been talking about over the past 3 weeks. So just to remind you of what that word is, providence is God setting things up so that what He wants to happen will happen. God is the one who is arranging things and orchestrating things and making things just the way that He wants them so that what He wants to happen will happen. Can you even imagine how terrifying this must have been for Esther? Like, can you even imagine what she must have felt? Like, Esther wasn't given any details. All she knew is what Mordecai said to her, that perhaps she had been made queen for such a time as this. Perhaps. I mean, she didn't know when, where, how, or even if God would save the Jewish people. All she had was a perhaps. All she had was today, what was right in front of her. And today is what I like to call the meantime. Esther had the meantime. She had the here and now, today. Another way of saying this, another way of describing the meantime is the setting things up period of time. It's the gap between what we hope God will do and what He does. You and I, just like Esther, this is where we live. We live in the meantime. We have today, the here and now. We live in that gap. And of course, our meantime does not look like Esther's. Our meantime looks a lot different. There's all kinds of meantimes, todays, in this room, wherever you find yourself. The past few weeks, we've actually been talking about this, I'm sure you noticed this giant letter U sitting on the stage. Well, just imagine this, if you will. This U kind of represents like two mountaintops here and a valley in between. Well, we've been talking about this, and maybe your meantime, if someone were to say to you, what's your meantime like? What's today like for you? You would say, well, you know what? I'm on this mountaintop experience. So life is good. I mean, you might even have a t-shirt on right now that says life is good, period. And that's your mountaintop experience. I mean, things are going great. But then there's others of you in this room that you're finding yourselves like sliding down into the valley here. And if someone were to ask you what today was like for you, what that gap was like for you, you would describe it as, it's a struggle. Every day is a struggle for me. And people don't even know how much I'm struggling, but it's tough. Esther was not handed a key to the future. We are not handed keys to the future. The future belongs to God. Here's what you need to know about the future, is that the future is actually God's business until He chooses to make it our business. We can get stuck here. We get stuck worrying so much about the future that we forget, or we don't see what's right in front of us in the meantime. Look at this. The first thing that Esther did in chapter 4, verse 16, she said, "Go and gather together all of the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. Fast for me." In other words, pray for me. She called all the people to go straight to God in prayer, and she did the same thing. The first thing that she did in the meantime to stay faithful to God was she prayed. She prayed. She went straight to the one who has the keys to the future. But Esther didn't just pray in the meantime, she also prepared. She prepared in the meantime. Look at this verse in Esther chapter 5, verse 4. She says, if it please the king, let the king and Haman come today to a banquet I have prepared for the king. This was on the third day of the fast. The third day, while she was praying, she went into the king and asked him to come to a banquet that she had prepared. That meant that while she was praying, she did not sit idle. She did not sit on her hands. She prepared. She prepared a banquet. Think about this. Her people, millions of Jews, face annihilation, and Esther's solution is to throw a dinner party. She's thinking like a woman. right? No. Esther decided to throw a dinner party because she prioritized her relationship with God through prayer. She went to him first. And because she did that, she aligned her thinking with God's thinking. She aligned her heart with God's heart. And this is an idea planted in her mind by God, because from the outside looking in, this looks ridiculous. But from the inside, the idea that God gave her, this was a bold move. This was risky. Esther prepared. Esther didn't just pray. She didn't just prepare a banquet. She also proceeded. She took a step of faith. Esther chapter 5, verse 1 says this: on the third day of the fast, Esther put on her royal robes and entered the inner court of the palace. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes. It had been 30 days since she had been summoned to King Xerxes. She had no idea if she was still in his favor or not. Haman, the antagonist of the story, he had more relational equity with Xerxes at this point in time than what Esther did. She had no idea. She took a gigantic, no turning back step of faith, not knowing where she would land at the end of the day. I mean, can you imagine what it will look like if LCBC became a church where the people here were described as, no matter where they found themselves in the meantime, as people who remained faithful, who trusted God? Can you imagine what that would look like? I'll tell you, it would change the world. The world. Let's trust God, and let's be faithful to him in the meantime, because he's got a purpose for us, a reason for us, right where we are.